Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Nazir daf Chaf Dalid. We are going to begin on the top of Chaf Dalid Amud Aleph by the new Mishnah. Masnisan Hayisha Shinad ben Nazir. So you have a woman that made a declaration that she was a Nazir. Ve'afrisha Behemta, and she even went so far as to separate the various karbanos which are applicable to someone who's a Nazir. V'yachachach hefer labala, and then her husband had her Nazirs removed. So now the question is, what do we do with these animals? So it depends. Im shelo haisa, if these animals were actually his, then habehema teitze v'tira b'eder. So we say that the animals go out and they graze in the field, like they go back to him. However, the im shelo haisa, and we'll discuss how is it possible that she has anything. Kol masha kaina isha kaina baal. Nonetheless, let's imagine, as the Mishnah says, that she could own something. Then haisa behema chatas. So he's saying the animal, when it comes to a chatas, it's tomos, it's killed, and we'll see why. The oila tikrav oila, and when it comes to the ola, it could be as an olas nadava, which you can always bring an ola. And shlomim tikrav shlomim, you can bring the shlomim v'nechol yom echad. However, it's only for one day. V'enon tu'unin lechem. However, we do not bring bread. So let's see Taisus. So Isha Shanada Benaz V'Hefrish Behemta. Shloisha Behemus. There's three animals. Kivsa is Lechatos. The Keves, a male Keves, is from an oila. The Ayel is L'Shlamim. Shehain Carbon Nazir Tahar. Those are the three karbanos that are brought if you are a Nazir Tahar at the end of the Naziris. V'yachach Hefer Labala. Her husband annulled it. So imishul haisa habehemateit sivatir be'eder. Why? Kivan dehefer labala, since her husband had it removed, ein kan naziris klal. There's no naziris. V'abehema shehefresh din chulin oleha. It's considered to be chulin, and therefore it goes back into the fields, for it to graze. Next Taisus, but if it was hers, a Gemara Mafar she'ein teitzila shelo yehi labal or shusba. This is actually one answer. The Gemara is going to say two answers, but according to Taisus, he brings down, let's say a person gives her something on condition that your husband has no reshus over it. So in that situation, it's hers. So he said, when it comes to a chatas, it's tomos, says Taisus. Avagav diahaferla, even though it was already annulled, so why is it necessary? Since she still requires some element of kapara, it's akin to a situation of a chatas in which the person who owns the chatas has died, and therefore because of that, the din just simply is that it needs to be killed. And we said an oila is an olas nadav, and the shlamim is only for one day. And Taisa says here, kechaymer shalmi nazir. We look in the mafarish, why one day? Kleimer lakachi shalehen adayin tara shlamim. It has the din of shlamim. Din nechom liyamechad. It's eaten for one day. Lo inyan zeh enim kishalmi nazir de enim tunin lechem. But it doesn't take upon itself all of the status of a Shalmi Nazir, because normally Shalmi Nazir requires breads to accompany the carbon shlomim, but this doesn't. So says Taisus, the enin tunan lechem kishar dechsiv al kapi hanazir. So the only time you bring the bread, if it's al kapi nazir, it's in the hands of the nazir. Vein kan kapi nazir. We don't have hands of the Nazir, Daheverla, because since it was annulled, she's not a Nazir. So therefore, you cannot apply the pasuk, and therefore she doesn't bring lechem. V'im hekdishu kvar toyin pedia. And let's say she had breads, and she was makdish these breads for this purpose before her husband annulled anything, so you need to be paida that bread. Defil I maker ocker, which is an unbelievable thing. Even though we brought down this a question, is it maker ocker, is it maker's gaias? So if it's maker ocker, that the hafara works l'mafreya, so it's like she was never a nazir. So then what's the difference if she was makdish as lechem? Gezer shemi yomer hektish yoytze blo pedia. We still require to do pidyon because we're concerned people are going to think that hektish in general, in normal circumstances where it is hektish, you could just remove it without even a pidyon. V'megas gaias. if let's say it works Mekano Abad, Nami Matzaliftais, you're still able to redeem it. The Enlu Kedusha Sagov, not Shish of a carbon. The bread doesn't take upon itself Kedusha Sagov until the carbon shlomim is brought, and therefore it's allowed to be paid. You can be paid it even if you hold Megas Gaius. Question 5. So Ha'isha Shenadu ben Nazir V'achal Chefer L'Abala. Kasav Taisus She'im Kvar Hikdishu Lachma Tain Pedia. Madu Sarach Pedia Ibal Maker Ocker. So he said, because it's a Gezerah, Shema Yomer Hektish Yatzabul Pidyon. And then the second question is, Heich Paida Kedusha Sagov, Ibal Megas Gaias. So he said that it doesn't take upon itself Kedusha Sagov until the Shechita of the carbon. Let's continue now the rest of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah then says a different situation. Hayulo, instead of animals, Hayulo mois. She has money earmarked for karbanos. However, they're stumim. They're non-specified. She didn't put the money and say, this $100 is for a chatas, this is for a shlomim. It's there for yipul nedava. All of that money can be given as a nedava. So that's acceptable. However, it's more problematic if it's ma'ois mefurashim. If the money was already earmarked specifically for a specific carbon. So therefore, if that's the situation, so just like the carbon is tomus, so the money of a chatas has to be destroyed. It's thrown literally into the Yam HaMelech, which basically means that you can't get hana from it. However, the din is that you can't get hana from it, but there is no din me'ila. Says Taisus, Kivan di'ilu ha'isa habeim habi etzla lamisa. Since if the animal was here, you'd have to kill it. You can't get hana from this money as a din rabbanan. Why? The kivan deliyam hamelch ozlu lo karinin be kodesh Hashem. Since it's going there, it doesn't take upon itself the level of kodesh Hashem for there to be an isra me'ila on it. Okay, Ayin Taisus. And then the Mishnah continues. So that's what you do with the demei chatas. It's thrown into the Amamelch. Demei oila yavu oila. So as we said before, you can still bring an olos nadava umualan behen because it takes upon itself kodesh laHashem. Demei shlamim yavu shlamim, and you can bring a shlamim with that money. As we said before. Says the Gemara, Man tana de baal loy mishtabid. Who is the tana that the husband doesn't need to bring the karbanos on her behalf? Says the Mefarish. Man havitana de tani diksavar. Who's the tana that holds? She'im hoisa habehema shalo. Therefore, his animals will chayole kedusha klal. There's no kedusha on it. The omer teitzav ter be'eder that just goes back. Mishum de baal lo mishabed lo. Will have a karbanos of klal. It must be because the husband has no obligation to have to bring the karbanos on her behalf. So I'm Rav Chisda Rabbanan he. Rabbi Huda he. My teitzav ter be'eder. According to Rabbi Huda, why would you be allowed to just say go? It's teitzel chulin. Says Mefarish hakivan demishabed bekarbanosah. Since that those animals are designated for his wife's karbanos, ishtakach we find the chi hekdisha shaper hekdisha. She did the right. She was allowed to be makdashit because it's something which her husband had to do. Hamishtabed law desanyu bihudaimer. Other maybe carbon asher. A person brings a carbon asher al ishtay for his wife. Says the Mefarish. She'im ha'isa aniyah. Let's say she's poor. And this chayva carbon ani. She has to bring a carbon of an ani. Though a spiko havi carbon ani ad shenise slow. And then she gets married to a rich guy. Jaharizem maybe carbon asher al ishto. So the man, because he's the one who's responsible to bring the karbanos or to pay for the karbanos on his wife's behalf, so therefore all of a sudden the carbon is no longer carbon ani, it's carbon asher. V'chein b'chol karbanos, says the Mefarish. Shechayev is kaidem v'chein. Any carbon of a field carbon kavua she'enim b'ol of a yared. Any type of a carbon, the husband has the obligation to. That's what's actually written in the ksuba. So says the Mefarish, why don't we say that his animal is like her animal? Why do we make any distinction between his and hers? Because what is his is really hers. So Rabbi Aimer, a field tamer Rabbi Huda. So if it's Rabbi Yehuda, why does it go back to Chulin? So Kim Shabbat law, when do we say that there are things that the husband must bring to her? There's b'milsa that tzrichala. These are things that she needs. Food, clothing. B'milsa delot tzrichala, lo. Things that she doesn't need, no. Says Mefarsh Gegain Hacha. The Hefer lo bala, the husband was mefer, lo mishtabed ba. It's not mishabed. Mishum hachi will kocha v'teitzav be'eder. That's the reason. So therefore, the din is that it goes back to Chulin. Says Taisus, Kegain the Hafer law loy mishabed lo klal. Be'afagan the mishabed law b'tanai based in Hilkach behema shalo. It's his. When it comes to his animals, teitzav be'eder. Davi Chulin gemurin v'loy havi kebehemata. It's not like hers. It's like Rabbi Huda. When we say that he has an obligation for her, there's only things that he needs to give to her. Because he was made for her, so therefore that's it. According to the Rabbanan, it's a double pasha, it's not meshubad at all. Okay. So what is a situation where he is obligated, the husband does have an obligation to do things for his wife? Kigoin the aknila. Let's say the Baal actually gave it to her. Kivan the aknila havi the nasha. So where it says that since he gave it to her, it's considered like they are hers. It's like they are considered hers. As we continue to Chafdal and the base. So Rabbi Omer, Kafil Tamer Rabbanan. Ki maknila nami. Also, when do we say that the husband gives her something? B'milsa srichala. B'milsa lo srichala loy maknila. So she was never kainit because it was not something what she needed because he was made for her. And then the Mishnah said, "Im shlo ha'isa behemta chatas tomas ol tikra." So when if it's hers, then that's the din. So he manole. So what does this mean? There's no possibility that you could actually be kind of something, because whatever she has automatically goes to her husband, which is going to be question TB 30. So let me just mark this down. TB 30. So Taisus, we'll see the Gemara. So Amar Papa shikam tzatsa misasa, that he took part of the dough. What does that mean? It says the Mefarish Kagain shehishrola mazainis alidei shlish, that he had the mazonos that he was supposed to give to her was done through a third party, and we learned the Masechtas Ksuvos do yichais law bishvua, that he should not give less for this woman in a week. Mishnei kabin chitin, 2 kabin of wheat. The yochach zu, and therefore this the kipcha mimuzonoseha ad kedei al yad ad shalochem hem behemazu. So basically, she was given a certain amount, which is the stipulation that he must give her something, and therefore it's her food. And now she, instead of eating it all, she saved some, and by saving some, now she owns it. That someone else caused her to acquire it, which is this what, as we saw before in the parish, that someone gave it to her on condition that her husband should not be kind it, and that in those two situations, so then that in fact is the din. So she was again like stingy with her dough, so to speak. So that is how that works. Question 6. Hey chamer b'gemara mishkachas la mois shel isha alidei shikimsa misasa. So how is it possible? Very kaimon the moisim mezainis nami the baal. This is a question that Taisus asks. L'chayra, even the moiser of mezainis should go to the husband. So the fact that she has extra, she should still not be zaycha to it. So let's look at this Taisus. V'im taimar v'oimer b'perek afal pi the moiser mezainis l'baal. So this is question number 6. Here, why do we say that's hers? That he said to her, that basically, you keep your masya deha, and I won't have to give you mazonis. Nisratz bekach, and she is satisfied. V'osiru masya deha, and she has extra masya deha. V'havadi didahavi, it's definitely hers. V'oteretz haram dehadi amrinan moiser mazonis labal. When do we say it goes to the husband? Is kagain shikatzvu lakach lakach dinorim l'shavos, that he designated a certain amount of money for a week. V'huzul hamazonis, and then it went down. Shedayla ba'isa kitzva, so that should be enough. K'dei shvu v'haiser isa ma'isa labal. That's to do with like monetary changes. Avahacha shekimsa miyusasa shalo is hers. Huzla hamazonis el kimsa pischa mipia shalo achal k'dei savoa. She ate until satiation. Dahu ma'aser havi vadi dida. In that situation, it's hers. So this is how they write question 6. That there's this exchange. Therefore, she wanted this, and therefore this is the extra money from her masya deha. Or kimsa misasa means shepichsa mepiha, that it went down in her mouth. V'u'acha l'savoa ein l'bal, and she did not eat it to satiation. That's to do with the price of food, etc. But if she herself decides to eat less, as actually I may have read this a little wrong, it says shelo achla. It says shelo achla kedei savoa. She didn't eat enough, so she was given enough food kedei savoa, but she didn't eat that much. So therefore, the din is that it's hers. That in fact she's entitled to that. Okay. Weiter. Ha'oil tikrav oil v'shlomim tikrav chul. So Omer Rav Shmuel, Ravua bar Ihi, lo tesav al karech. Do not sit literally on your ankles. Don't sit down to get comfortable. Adi amrit lichadamils. To explain to me one thing. Ve'elhein arba elim. These are the 4 elim. These are the 4 rams. Shintun lechem. That there's no requirement for bread. So what are these 4 situations? So the Gemara elaborates. Shelo, his. Vishla, hers. V'shliachar misa, after death. V'shliachar kapara. And after kapara, these are 4 times in which there is no requirement that lechem is not brought. Now, shelo, hadi amr. That's a case of our Mishnah. That, as we said, that if she owns these animals, and her husband is made for her neder of becoming a Nazir, the din is that these animals, you do bring a shlomim, but you don't bring the lechem because of kape Nazir. Shelo, what's his? Did not. Ish madaras benoi benazir. A man can make a neder regarding his son about being a Nazir. Ish madaras as benah benazir. But a woman does not have that right to do so. So if you look in Taisus, Masnisin he bepirkin, we're going to see this later on in Daf Chav Ches. Shalhai pirkin mafarish le lamar de halacha he the ish mader beno v'holcha niskabel diyocha limchais. He's able to protest bein hu bein kroivav, whether it's him or his relatives. Lafikach galhu, he will shave. V'asa masa begufo lavatan nazirus aviv o shemicha b'divuro. So either he protests or he does something to go against the declaration of his father. So again, the father has this right regarding his son, but not his wife. So again, ein ha'isha maderes has bena ben nazir. Gilach o shigilchuhu. If the son cut his hair, or is cut by kroivim, micha, they protest. O shemichuhu kroivim. Either he protests or the relatives protest. Hayula moistumim yipul nadava. So again, we see that under these circumstances, it's possible that while he's a nazir, if he protests, even if he didn't cut his hair, it could still be mavatal in the nazirus. And therefore, what do we do with these animals? So if it's moisma for Rashim, if the money is already earmarked, to be chatas, to be oila, you be oila. And while in behen, to be shlamim, you be shlamim, and echon liyam echad, v'inatun lechem. So it's mamash the exact same thing, that we do the same thing. Here he's a Nazir, and it's basically being mavatal it. So the din is, he's still allowed to bring a shlamim, but he doesn't bring lechem. What's the third case? Shiliach mis after death. No, the sanya. If someone set aside money for Nazirus, you're not allowed to get hana from it, and you're not allowed, there's no din me'ilah, because it's not Kodesh Hashem yet. Because they could all be brought as a shlomim, he explains. And says the Mefarish, any of that money could have been a shlomim. It was shlomim amrin in the lake of me'ilah with nizrikas damim. There is no din me'ilah when it comes to a carbon shlomim before the zrikas adam. So therefore, since any of it could be a shlomim, so therefore there's no din me'ilah. Mace, let's say this person dies, and you have money which it was just not earmarked for a specific animal, so yipul nadava. So all that money goes to nadava, but it's ma'ois mifurashin. If the money was designated for each thing, so the meichat is yalich liamamelch. Again, here we go. The third thing, so we see again the din is that achar misa, if it was already moistumim, so then the din is mois mefarashim rather. So then you do bring a shlomim, but you don't bring lechem. And then finally shliach kapara. Sparhu, this is logical. The reason why achar misa, we say all these dinim, that you don't bring the bread or let's say the chatas, is because it's not fit for kapara, because he's dead. There's no kapara achar misa. After misa. Shliach kapara nami. So it's the same thing. It's after kapara. Kapara. Since the animals were already brought. So what would be this situation of achar kapara? So the Mefarish explains. Shim hifresh behemtai. Let's say you set aside an animal. The avdo, it got lost. Oh, mois. Let's say you designated money. The avdo, the money got lost. Hifresh shachrem tachteim, and you end up designated a different animal in its stead. V'achach nimsu chatos. Let's say you found the animal. Or demei chatos, so the money that was lost. So, but you already were did everything. You already were makar of the karbanos, so you already achieved kapara. Now what do you do with this extra money that you found? So yoch yamamelech v'ayla tikra v'ayla shomim shomim nechel miyamechad into the lechem. This svarhu, as we said. So that's the case. The suleika, I told me it's only these four cases, but I'll tell you another one. Va'ika, it says v'shar kol shalmi nazir. When it comes to the shalmi nazir, sheshachtan shlokim mitzvasan. It was shechted not in its mitzvah. What does that mean? It says Taisus, Pirish Rashi b'menachos, sheshachtan sholashman, that you took the carbon shlomim, the shalmi nazir, and you did it without the right intentions. Oid Pirish sham lishtachrina shlokim mitzvasan, the ayil ksiv haya ben shtei shanim. Behaviu b'nei shana. When it came to the ayil that you were supposed to bring, it had to already at least have been shtei shanim 2 years, and you brought one which was only a b'nei shana. So that's considered to be shlokim mitzvasan. Ksherim. So the din is it's still kosher as a sholmi nedava. V'lo oilin l'shum chayva. Since you didn't do it properly, so it's not going to count as a sholmi nazir, but at least it'll count as a sholmi nedava. So it's a kosher carbon. But I guess you just didn't fulfill your obligation. You still have to bring another carbon to fulfill the shalmi nazir. But what do we say when it comes to this animal? We see again, it doesn't need bread, because after all, we're talking about a situation where, again, this is a situation where you bring it's still a shlomim, but no bread. So why don't we bring this case as well? If it was shech to shol k'mitzvasan. Your answer is k'mitzvasan k'chashiv, shol k'mitzvasan lo k'chashiv. We wanted to mention the cases which are mitzvasan, and not the cases which were shlo b'mitzvasan. Okay, we're going to stop here. Good place to stop. Let's see. Question. Let's see. TA 29 possibly. Ha'isha shenadru ben Nazir, the hefresh is behemta, hers, v'yachach hefu labala, im shelo ha'isa teitziv v'ter v'eder. So this is definitely on our daf. Matzad leimer shehamishna delo karabanan. Why is it not like the Rabbanan? It's really delo mishabedla umay dachi rava. So this is a little bit. It's actually Chaf Daled Manaf and the top of Chaf Daled Beis. So basically the answer is, and I got this right, which is beautiful, Kivan Delo Mishabed Law, since he's not obligated to give karbanos, Al Karchach Akni Aknuilav Im Kain Havishalah, then it's obviously hers. When it comes to something in which she doesn't need because he was made for her, so he's not makne to her. Adkan.